Welcome to the All-Star Athlete Podcast, your guide to mastering the mental game and reaching your full potential.
Today's sponsor is Well Traveled. This time of year, we're always on the go. With all the activities, stress, and travel, it's easy to feel tired and run down. Maybe you're feeling that way right now. Give your immune system a natural boost with Well Traveled, a drink mix made with plant-based, clinically proven ingredients and no added sugar. It's a better alternative to Emergen-C and Airborne. Just open a packet, mix with water, and enjoy. Right now, you can save 25% by using the code ALLSTAR at checkout on their website. Visit gowelltraveled.com/discount/allstar to grab your 25% discount. Again, that's gowelltraveled.com/discount/allstar. Stay well on the go with Well Traveled. Today, our guest is Hailey Jackson. Hailey is a former NCAA track and field athlete who specialized in sprinting. Hailey is now a personal trainer working at Fit Athletic Club, Little Italy in San Diego. Hailey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Justin. It's a pleasure being here. My first time speaking on any kind of podcast, so I'm excited. Thank you.
Absolutely. So for starters, kind of just to follow up on the introduction that I just gave for you, can you start by just introducing yourself a little bit more fully for our listeners and giving us a little bit of a background on your career in track and field?
Absolutely. So I grew up in California, always have lived in California. I grew up in the Bay Area until about middle school age. At a younger age, I did lots of different type of travel sports, competitive cheerleading, softball, lots of fun little things. I always enjoyed doing sports. When I moved to Redding, California, very, very NorCal, I definitely had a change of lifestyle. I was in a very suburban area of the Bay Area, and then we had property and we had acres and had a pasture and a barn. And I grew up first in Redding doing a lot of horse activities. I started just learning how to ride through my mom. She was really big into horses, started competing. This is actually a very fun fact about me. Competed in some rodeos. A few know that about me. I loved it. While joining school, at that age in middle school, it was hard to make new friends. It's like pre-teenage, so it's a hard intro to a whole new school. I tried picking up basketball and softball. Didn't really know how speedy I was yet. Once track season came around, wanted to make some new friends, started to love it, and then at the high school level, that's when I really knew, oh, okay, this is probably something that I'll be doing for a while, and especially in the sprinting world in track and field.
Okay, cool. So you're from the Bay Area originally. Mm-hmm. What city?
Milpitas.
Milpitas, okay. Mm-hmm. I actually I didn't grow up in the Bay Area, but I think we talked about this before the show. I spent a decent portion of time in Pleasanton, yes, California. I'm from the East Coast originally, but I've lived in Pleasanton, which is also in the San Francisco Bay Area myself. And then it sounds like you've always been into sports and physical exercise and activity from a young age, probably like to play outside and these sorts of things. And then it sounds like you moved to Northern California, where you kind of had a little bit more of like a rural residence, it sounds like, mm-hmm. And participated in, rodeo events. So you've always been into physical activity, and then you transitioned into playing some other sports, where you kind of started to have a feel for like your athleticism and how fast you were specifically. So what sort of first inspired you to pursue track and field specifically? Was it just that you realized that you were speedy? Sort of how did your journey in the sport of track and field begin?
Yeah, actually with both horseback riding and track, two sports that my mom really heavily enjoyed. So I think I originally started like following in her footsteps and her encouraging me, just loving track and horseback riding. But it wasn't until that high school level the middle school level, we would run on dirt tracks, like simple track meets, which was fun. But until that high school level, I really started to appreciate and love it. And then, of course, carrying that on to my college career.
Okay, so it was middle school, high school, where you kind of really started to pursue track and field. Sounds like your mom was probably pretty athletic.
Yes.
Was she a track and field athlete?
Yep. She grew up going to private Catholic school, so her track career or experience was a little bit different than mine. Small private school, all girls. But she has always told me since I was young, like how fast she was and how athletic. My brother and my dad were very athletic as well. So I always knew that about myself, but I definitely was more on the shy side. I loved coming home to my horses. So like having a sportier background too, outside of being home and being with my horses, it was eye-opening to me how social, and it brought me out of my shell definitely. And that's when the high school, college level, I really started to like appreciate it and like understood that I am athletic. I am more than just a little horse girl in my little small town up in Northern California.
Okay. So it sounds like track and field, or sports generally speaking, were a good avenue for you to get out of your social shell a little bit.
Totally.
For anybody that's moved when they're younger, I experienced this myself, moving from New Hampshire to California. It's very difficult to sort of fit into a new culture and make new friends in middle school, high school level. People are very judgy, and it can be kind of cliquey, and it's kind of hard to fit in, especially if you're shy and introverted, which I am a little bit shy and introverted myself. So I definitely empathize with you there. So it sounds like you kind of had an athletic family background. You always enjoyed physical activity. And then when you got into high school, you kind of fell sort of into track and field, maybe sort of following in your mom's footsteps a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was a good opportunity for you to really express yourself athletically and then also socially.
Yeah, and to be honest, I would say I had like a small group of friends in high school, but people actually started to like understand me and like even just know my name and who I was through track. They would hear my name on the speakers every day, like breaking records and all that fun stuff that I can get into. But it really gave me like a boost of confidence, people just getting to know me better and helping me socially branch out, make some new friends, because I was on the shyer side. So that, I think that really helped me, especially moving, because that's, yeah, like you said, so hard at that age to try and fit in with cliques and groups that have already been established at a young age. So you and I both had that switch where we had to like kind of start over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you shared that, because a big purpose of this podcast is, and we're going to talk about mental performance and techniques and these sorts of things, but I really want to highlight with everybody that I'm bringing onto the show their background experiences, because these are things that shape us and who we are as a person, where we come from, how we got into our athletic pursuits and endeavors, and, kind of how that shaped us as a person. And so it's very important, I think, for people, any listeners who kind of might be out there listening to this podcast, that like, if you're going through these kind of adverse situations where you're moving and it's difficult for you to fit in, and you're going through maybe some traumatic experiences when you're a child, kind of growing up through adolescence, like that's very normal. And a lot of times, in fact, it's people that go through these difficult situations that kind of end up coming out ahead, because they are dealing with this adversity and it kind of helps shape them and make them who they are. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
So it sounds like you kind of walked us through the beginning stages of playing some sports and getting into track and field. So talk about your collegiate track and field career, and then sort of eventually how you transitioned out of that. So
yeah,
kind of outline your whole college career briefly, and then like how did you decide it was time to move on and transition out of that into what you're doing now?
Totally, yeah. The fun part. So towards the end of high school track career, that's actually when I made the decision, knowing that I was going to start running collegiately sold the horses, kind of like put that chapter behind me. That's the year, my senior year, where I was breaking all the high school records, which I still hold.
Hey.
Fun fact. Scouts starting to talk to me at my track meets, and that's when it was all like, okay, this is cool. I might actually go somewhere. I did not know at the time what I wanted to do in college. I was not very motivated in that sense to know what career I wanted to do.
Like academically.
Academically, yeah. Yes. I knew I wanted to run. So I ended up making the decision to start at a junior college, a local junior college, do a couple years there, kind of figure out, dabble around, see what I wanted to maybe pursue, because I was lost in that sense academically, and spend 2 years running there and then eventually transfer somewhere. So I went to Shasta College first, which is also in Redding, California, a big transfer school, so people from all over. I had teammates from Florida, very random transfer school. It was a small team. It was a funky track program, but I definitely made the friendships and the pathways to take me to then Chico State. I spent a couple years at Shasta College. I was running the 100 and 200, which are the shortest sprints in track and field, and then of course doing the relays as well. Those were my favorite events. And then once transferring to Chico State, I toured around a few schools up in Oregon, in the Napa area, Sonoma, toured a few Humboldt, all D2 level schools that I knew I could get maybe a walk-on, maybe a little bonus heading to those teams, but
a little scholarship money maybe.
Yeah. I knew I would do decent at that level, but just to be on a team was just everything to me. So the D2 level was something I was really proud of. But toured around. Chico State was by far the best tour. I got to meet all the coaches, felt an amazing vibe there. Chico State's known as being one of the best Division II track and field programs in all of California.
Yeah, so that's California State University Chico, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Which you went to as well.
Yes, I did.
My Chico buddy.
Yes, Division II. So you went to a Division II school. Was D1 ever a consideration, or?
No. So in the sprinting world, I excelled in high school. I went to the state meets. I felt really confident, but as soon as I got to that junior college level, I realized I was a little too lengthy. I needed to build some muscle. At that time, I was just starting to weight train, which is so crazy to think about. Had I done that beforehand? So I knew the Division I level probably was out of reach, out of touch. I also enjoyed that Chico State was only an hour and a half away. I was a bit of a homebody. So D2 just felt comfortable, and I felt like I could still excel, still be a little shining star on the team, but I knew that Division I was a little out of touch.
Yeah, so you wanted to stay locally because you're probably pretty close with your family.
Yep.
Was living in Redding at the time, and you knew that you wanted to excel and feel kind of safe and comfortable. And I went to CSU Chico myself, and it does have a very homey vibe to it. For those who are unfamiliar with it, it's often sort of pegged as a party school, and there's a lot that goes on there as far as partying goes, but it's also very community-oriented school because there's not a lot within a 1 to 2 mile radius of it. It's kind of up there in Northern California, and so everybody that goes to school there kind of just stays there in terms of going out and stuff. So it's very community-oriented, so it sounds like that spoke to you and went well for you. So you started at Shasta for a couple of years, transitioned to Chico State Division II, doing sprints, shorter sprints, and then you transitioned into doing some of the longer events. Is that right? Yeah.
So as soon as I joined the team, it was probably at the very beginning. So I was technically in my junior year, my third year running collegiately, where my coaches, we had actually specific coaches this time around since I was at a bigger track school. So I had my weightlifting coach, I had my sprints coach, I have my blocks coach coming out, little specific coaches for each part in track and field, especially my sprints. And that's when I got to learn my own body better, realizing that I think I could do even better doing a longer sprint, which is a 400-meter sprint. I have a long stride.
Because you're fairly tall, right?
Fairly tall.
I guess most track athletes are, or certainly, like track and field, right? There's other events, but usually sprinters, hurdlers, and so forth are fairly like taller, right?
Correct. So getting to know myself a little bit better and my sprinting capabilities, the 400-meter just sounded scary, but it also made a lot more sense. In my experience in track, I always had a little bit harder time coming out of the blocks. My explosiveness wasn't as fast as some of my teammates were. So in an 100-meter race, your starts are everything. If you have a bad start, you're going to be way far behind. There's only so much ground to cover. So the 200-meter sounded better, but the 400-meter sounded even better. Not the most fun race in the world. It's a full sprint, full lap, very strategic, versus the 100 and 200. I just was told to sprint as fast as I can from start to finish, but the 400, you really have to like mentally check in. It's all thought out and planned out. So I had a big switch in that aspect. Was not happy at first. The 400, like I said, was a brutal race to run. It was way harder on my body, but once I started weightlifting and doing all the new things in my program, realized that actually was my best race. And I finished my collegiate career confidently saying that was my best race yet.
Right. So it sounds like maybe your explosivity was not that of some of your track and field teammates. And
yes.
So you were better suited for a longer race where the start didn't necessarily define the finish so much. Like 100 yard,
a meter,
100 meter sprint, for example, the classic, world's fastest man and woman, right? Like Usain Bolt and these sorts of things. If you have a slow start, you only have 90 more meters to make it up.
You're done for.
But if you have a bit of a slower start on a longer race, you have more time to make up the difference. But it sounds like it was a bit of a challenging transition for you mentally, which we'll get into talking about that shortly. With a 100-meter sprint, you are just emptying the gas tank in like 12 seconds, and then you're done. With 400 meters, that's probably like a 50 to 60 second race.
Yep.
And, we know this as personal trainers, you sort of run out of anaerobic energy within 10 to 15 to 20 seconds. And so, like you were saying, it's kind of strategic, like you're sprinting, but you can't be going absolutely 110% for the whole lap.
Correct.
So you need to conserve energy a little bit in terms of but it sounds a lot more brutal, I think you sort of mentioned, because it's 60 seconds of essentially almost sprinting as fast as you can. But that ended up being your best race and sort of what you ended up finishing, your college career with.
Yes, and that race specifically it felt even more accomplishing, like breaking off a second or two on your time. That felt like the world, because in the 100 and 200, you would maybe break off like a tenth of a second. That was very hard as well to accomplish, but there was a little bit more room to break off time, mentally getting stronger, physically getting stronger. My main goal was to break a minute, 60 seconds in the 400 meters. That was a big goal of mine to start. And then by the end of my track career, I did. I believe I got 57.9. I'll have to look that up. I'm forgetting now. But that was a huge deal for me. It was at a meet down in Los Angeles, and it feels really, really good to work for something at a longer sprint. I felt better on my body. It was meant to be my race. The relays were always my favorite, but yeah, the 400 ended up being the best one and the one I despised the most.
Okay, well, it's funny how that works sometimes. The things that we don't think that we're going to end up being the things that we're the best at.
Yep.
So
I just had to take the advice of the coaches.
Yeah. Okay, so, and we'll kind of bounce around a little bit here, but as far as transition, so you finished your track and field career after CSU Chico, and then transitioned into, so you're a personal trainer now. Did you immediately transition into doing personal training, or walk me through kind of that retirement process into what you're doing or what you were doing next at the time?
Yeah, you couldn't have paid me to and to tell me that I would have been a personal trainer, honestly, like while I was in college. So the career path I ended up choosing in college that I was a little hesitant on was to become a teacher, specifically for kindergarten, first grade age. I love the kids. I thought maybe that I could do a combination of track and field, maybe some coaching with kids, but decided to become a teacher. So I actually did that throughout my last year at Chico State. I started working part-time while I was finishing up school. And after track was over, I had some free time to actually work. It's really hard to have a job while you're training collegiately at school, but started working at a preschool and junior kindergarten academy in Chico. Was there for about a year and a half post-college, and I was teaching there, loved it. Moved to San Diego. I did not know anyone down here in San Diego, so I thought it would be fun to get a part-time job working at a gym, a place I enjoyed. I feel like I could find some commonalities with people. Randomly saw that Fit, in Solana Beach, it's not open anymore. Solana Beach Fit was opening, started working part-time, front desk, meeting people. I was nannying and also working at a school here as well, seeing what I wanted to do. Then I started picking up group fitness part-time, started teaching spin classes. That was my first indulgement into the coaching world. Loved spin classes personally, so I just felt like I could have some fun teaching classes. Started transitioning into more HIIT style strength classes, branched out a little bit while working for Fit, and then got the idea that, wow, I could take this even further. Let's get my certification and try one-on-one training. So it was a big switch. Never really envisioned that for myself. Fitness was always something I did on the side, and I always put the teaching children first, but started.
So you started as a teacher out of Chico State and then sort of transitioned into, you were nannying, you were doing a lot. And I think it's a classic example of what a lot of people do in their 20s. I mean, I'm on a second career right now myself as a personal trainer. I used to work in the tech industry and actually sort of borderline third career, if you count the mental performance coaching that I'm doing right now. As we mentioned, we both went to CSU Chico. I was actually there. We weren't there at the same time. I don't think we overlapped anyways, but I was getting my master's degree in sport and exercise psychology, kinesiology specifically, but with a focus on sport and exercise psychology. So I think to your story, it's a classic example of like people taking their 20s to kind of figure out what they want to do.
Totally.
Started as a teacher, you were doing some nannying, and then fitness has always been sort of a passion of yours. So you started kind of working part-time at a gym. As people may or may not know, the cost of living in San Diego, I mean, everywhere is expensive. So kind of paying the bills and also kind of getting some personal enjoyment out of maybe joining the gym and then becoming a spin instructor and then eventually kind of transitioning into being a personal trainer. So not something that you had ever thought you were going to do coming out of college, but sort of eventually where you ended up right now.
Yeah, and I wish I could go back in time and know that this was going to be my future endeavor. I feel like I would have absorbed more of the sports that I did and like the coaching that I received. I had amazing coaches at Chico State, and I wish I could have absorbed more from them. I wish I could go back in time and learn from them, knowing that this would be my future career, because I love it and enjoy it now, and I just appreciate them so much more than ever because I'm on this side that they're on now. That I wish I could go back and ask them a million questions, because it's so cool that I'm on the same field as them.
Yeah. Did you ever think about coaching track and field?
Yeah.
Like, is that maybe in your future? Because you're a coach now. I mean, personal training and coaching, very similar. That seems to be a calling for you. Have you considered like maybe that you could be a track and field coach in the future?
Definitely. That's probably top of my list of the next step I would do. If I ever were to move or start any new career, I think I would indulge in the coaching side of track and field as well as doing my personal training, because I love that. But especially for the young kids, because I do miss being with younger age children. I feel like I'm meant to work with children. I've always felt that at a young age, that meant to be a mom, meant to work with children. So I would love to combine my knowledge of track and personal training, and maybe starting some kind of program or coaching at a school, something along the lines. I would love to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I think combining our passions is a very important concept in life, generally speaking. I don't want to get too philosophical, but I think a lot of people get kind of stuck doing a career for various reasons, having to pay the bills and so forth. But I always encourage people to follow their passion, which is something that I did. As I mentioned earlier, I used to work in tech, and then I got sick of doing that. It wasn't a passion of mine. It wasn't like my purpose. And that's kind of ultimately why I went back to school, pursued personal training, pursued the mental performance coaching. I've always been a big advocate of mental health. I myself have struggled with depression and anxiety in the past. Currently seeing a therapist, have seen countless therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists in the past, very open about talking about my experiences. But I've also been always interested in sports and athletics and eating healthy and staying active. And so this mental performance coaching journey that I'm sort of embarking upon, or that I'm pursuing, is a combination of those two things. It's the physical pursuits as well as the mental pursuits kind of tied together. So for you obviously enjoy helping people. Kids are very special for you, but you also have always had this intrinsic value of fitness and health. And so for you, that could be like the perfect combination of starting a program to get kids following their athletic dreams in track and field, whatever age that is, whether it's, middle school, high school, whatever. Like, that sounds like it could be in your future.
Absolutely. Especially in the weightlifting category. I was obsessed with weightlifting actually at the junior college era. That's when I started picking up a barbell. My body went through a huge transition. At first my body was at shock, but I wish I had started earlier on as a kid, or even in high school, starting weight training. I know like the football team would start weight training in high school and other sports teams, but track, we never really had like a designated weightlifting part of our practices. So something like that, incorporating weight training, which I've gained a lot of knowledge about since being a personal trainer, including that with kids as well, 'cause starting at a young age, that's so important.
For sure, and especially as we both know, for women specifically, where weight training is a little bit more, I don't want to say taboo, but women tend to shy away from the weight training a little bit more. That's changing. And we're a big part of that. You know, I have a lot of female clients who are in their 20s, 30s, who are just now kind of getting into weight training. But I think particularly starting women, because you kind of missed that chapter, like you were saying earlier, like you could have gone to D1 if you'd started weight training a bit earlier.
I agree.
And kind of the research and the scientific literature as far as like resistance training for women in particular, I mean, it's obviously important for everybody, but women in particular, as we're aging through the life cycle, I don't want to get too far off topic here, but, fending off sort of early onset osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, dementia, simply participating in acts of daily living, like just maintaining your independence throughout the life cycle, super huge for women in particular. And society is coming around a little bit more and seeing that like strong is beautiful. And we're going to talk about this a little bit as far as like body image and these sorts of things, because that all really plays into having like a muscular physique versus societal's like beauty standards and all these kind of things. So I want to talk about that stuff. But real quick, let's kind of move on here. Real quick, where can people connect with you and follow your journey about your college career or anything that you're up to right now?
So I have a little fitness Instagram. It's Hailey Jackson Fit. I post a little bit on there. I need to be better about doing some content. That's actually my goal this year, is to start doing some more content and sharing a little bit more about my track and field experience and what I'm doing now and my big transitions through life, because I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. I know when I'm scrolling and I see someone I relate to, you gravitate towards them. You want to follow them. You want to read more about them. You want to scroll deep. I think I have a lot to say and a big background and big transitions. So I do want to post more about that, but that's where you can find me. Okay. I'm also at Fit Athletic in Little Italy. That's where I train. But my social presence is just on Instagram.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll definitely include the details for that Instagram page in the captions for this podcast. So if anybody wants to check out Hailey's journey, DM her, any questions for her, we'll include those details in the captions below. So let's move on here. I want to talk about sort of mental performance with respect to your track and field career. We're going to talk about mental performance, body image a little bit, these sorts of things. And then if there's anything that kind of came up throughout your journey that impacted your mental state, right? Mental health, this is all tied together. So we're going to kind of talk about some of that stuff now.
Okay.
So specifically, were there any standout moments or like defining experiences during your track and field career? And if you did have any like specific sort of standout moments like that sub 60 second 400 meter, for example, did mental performance factor into any of those standout performances in any way, like any techniques that you used?
Totally. Touched on this a little earlier, but just my confidence as a person grew tremendously, like as my track career went on. Started off as like very shy to making a couple friends, to people getting to know me, to going collegiately. And by the end of my track career, I was a completely different person. Having that confidence mentally really, really helped me shine more and perform better out on the track. I just felt better about myself. I felt like I had a community. I feel like I related to people. I was being more social. It just all tied in together. So I think those moments I can really see myself, like picture myself growing throughout each year, through high school, through college. That absolutely helped me. And till this day, even just moving to San Diego, starting at a gym, it just keeps going and going. But my confidence socially and coming out of my shell is a huge standout to me.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily like any moment in particular, like you won a race or you had this breakthrough. I mean, you did mention the sub 60 seconds, so that was probably a big moment for you, but more so like the experience of track and field and helping you become more confident as a woman, coming out of your social shell a little bit. And, you know, that has kind of helped shape you into who you are right now and how successful you are right now, because I know you as a personal trainer and you're super social, super bubbly, super friendly, like always high-fiving everybody, complimenting everybody, like interacting with just about everybody that I see. And people would probably never guess that you were just like a really shy, like horse riding, like farm girl. And so like it really had this track and field, it sounds like had a really transformative experience, was a kind of a transformative experience for you in shaping who you are today. Is that true?
Correct. And I think the biggest, what I was thinking when you were asking that, the biggest thing that really just was a kickstart to me and the big moment in time was even just getting to be on the Chico State team. Like Chico State track team is the it team at the meets. People are like wearing like Beat Chico shirts. Like when the Chico State like bus rolls up, I had amazing athletes on my team. I just really looked up to them, girls and guys. They all went really far. Some even doing like Olympic sports now, but amazing teammates. I really looked up to them. I was definitely more on like the bottom of the totem pole on the team, but just being on the team and being able to wear that uniform, I just really felt proud of myself, and that's what really gained my confidence. So that was a starting point, just getting to walk onto that team and being a part of that whole experience.
Okay, and speaking of sort of walking on, so you were a walk-on then, or did you receive any scholarship money, or talk about that just briefly? Yeah,
a few reach outs when I was in junior college. One was in Oregon, one was at Sonoma State, Humboldt State, a few local, not too far schools from Redding, California, where I was living, that I toured, but I actually declined all of that and took the one walk-on team that I wanted to explore in Chico. I just immediately knew it was a family atmosphere. The coaches, I felt like the one team that wasn't paying me money to join their team, I felt the most comfortable with them. I felt like they wanted me more than the rest. I didn't feel like just a number. I got those kind of feelings when I went and toured other schools and met those coaches. But yeah, I ended up with the one school of the 4 or 5 that I toured, walking on, taking no scholarships, no financial aid, just walking on and happy to be even invited to be on that team.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe that was pretty empowering for you to walk on to that school, even though they weren't offering you any scholarship money. You maybe felt like you resonated the best with the coaches, and you kind of knew about Chico State. They kind of had like a name and a reputation, and so that probably built your confidence even more, knowing that they weren't really like paying you in a sense to come be a member of their track and field team. So Correct. That sounds like it was pretty empowering for you.
Yeah, I felt very proud of myself.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
So, okay. So let's talk about when you were sort of younger, maybe high school days. We're kind of continuing along this vein of mental performance. So were there any mental sort of challenges that you faced, right? We talked about like the social aspect and like coming out of your shell. Did you ever deal with any like stress or anxiety or like negative self-talk going on up here or these sorts of things? So did you face any mental challenges when you were sort of younger? Or how did you handle like pressure during competitions? Did you ever feel pressure? And specifically, like based on those challenges that you faced, do you have any advice for maybe some younger athletes that might be also facing reasonably some of the same things?
Yeah, I think throughout time, I've definitely gained a little bit more organization skills, especially like to this day. I feel like whatever it is in life, I'm very prepared for it. If it's a meeting, if it's a session with my client, I'm always mentally and physically prepared. And if I'm not, that really brings me a lot of anxiety and I feel like a lot more pressure on my back. And I think I did not understand that at that young age. So if I could give a piece of advice, is just being confident about being prepared, doing all you can to feel your best, look your best, compete your best, because that will really carry on throughout life. So I wish I could go back in time and give myself like a pat on the back or a little pep in my step of being prepared and just knowing my capabilities and not just showing up and feeling that pressure on your back.
So it sounds like maybe you struggled with organization a little bit back when you were younger, and you wish you would have prepared a little bit more ahead of time, whether that was mentally, physically. How did that kind of manifest? Like you didn't get enough sleep, you weren't like studying your competitors, like your nutrition was off. Like what do you mean you wish you would have prepared or been more organized? So
at the high school age, I did have a couple horses at my house that I was very fortunate to have. I had an amazing growing up. Taking care of them is a full-time job, and I knew that when we were getting the horses and I was learning that sport, doing those 2 different competitions, track at school, horseback riding on my free time and at home, I did feel rushed and I did feel very stacked. Just day to day, and I feel like I almost gave horseback riding and that competition a little bit more of my mental like attention. You're just paying more attention to. I think I loved it more at the time.
Yeah, and you're more passionate about totally riding horses and putting your energy and your effort into that than track. Absolutely. So I think at that time, that's when we decided when I was going to college. Okay, it's going to be one or the other. I could either keep going the horseback route or I can transition into track and field. So just finding a nice balance of the sport you want to pursue so that you can give 100% in and not be 50-50 or 60-40. Right. So you kind of knew that you would have to focus your energy and your effort on one thing. Yes. Because identifying as an athlete at the highest level, which anybody that competes at the collegiate level, whether it's D1, D2, D3, whatever, it requires 110% of your effort in order to certainly excel. Yes. And usually that's the amount of effort that athletes give, especially when you're a student athlete, right? And you're trying to have a social life because everybody wants to enjoy their college experience. So maybe you're going out and socializing a little bit, partying, whatever you're doing. But like in order to excel as an athlete, you need to give 110%. You're probably structuring your daily, if not weekly, if not monthly routines around when am I weight training, when am I going to bed, my hydration, my nutrition, when am I getting my stuff done for my classes because I need to remain academically eligible. So it sounds like, unfortunately, as much as you enjoyed horses and, competing in that realm, that when you committed to going to Shasta College and then ultimately Chico State, sadly, probably for you, it was time to move on from the competitive sort of horseback riding realm.
Yes. Yep. So a chapter that was kind of pushed off, left behind, but then it really helped me gain confidence and start running better. I performed phenomenally towards the end after like that chapter closed because I could really focus, started personal training with a coach, starting to lift weights, and had more time to focus on that career path.
Okay, so maybe the takeaway there is then for anybody who's listening to this that might have aspirations of excelling at the high school, collegiate, even professional level, would be to focus your energy and your efforts maybe even a few years earlier than you did. So this would be starting in the middle school, high school level, and focusing your energy and your efforts and your preparation and your organization on the one thing that you want to excel at. Because in order to differentiate yourself from the competition and ultimately excel at the highest level of athletics, you need to commit yourself to sort of investing in one pursuit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's move on to sort of talking about continuing, right, this idea of mental health and mental performance. I want to touch upon the subject of body image and body dysmorphia. Particularly for women, this is an ongoing challenge with social media and societal expectations and sort of the pressure to look beautiful, just sort of calling it out as it is. Women are sort of expected to look a certain way, not by me personally. I'm just saying like societal expectations of, beauty and body shape and these sorts of things, which unfortunately within the athletic realm is often at odds with the body type that excels and performs the best athletically. So I'm wondering if for you, did you ever have any body image or concerns around nutrition, and did this ever affect your performance? Talk to me a little bit about your experiences with any sort of body image or body dysmorphia issues as during your time as an athlete, really, of any level.
Yeah. In high school, don't have a huge memory. I was actually just like reflecting the last few days about high school and how I felt about my body image. Don't have any big impact stories that I can think of at that age. I think I was just coming out of my shell and just felt so good about that was my main focus. But at the collegiate level, I do remember comparing myself as a woman to other girls on my team. Like, they looked so strong, they looked so cool. They come from all different types of cities and all over the country, and I just was really fascinated by that. And being a track and field athlete, we're wearing the tiniest little uniforms. Like, my bottoms like barely covered my butt, like my little tiny top. You just had to look great. And when I felt like I did look great, I felt like I competed better. And it's such a crazy aspect, but I felt like my body needed to be tan. I needed to look like I had definition on my body. My hair needed to be done. I felt like I could compete better, which is so crazy because it has nothing to do with my athletic performance. I felt like I could compete better because of my confidence. My track meets went more smoothly when I had my hair done, pulled back nice braids. I had a tan going on. Just all of that really translated into meet day performance and how I felt and how I actually performed.
So sort of the classic idea of like look good, feel good, perform good.
Yep.
So you feel like when your physique was as dialed in as possible. Your abs were maybe popping out a little bit.
The track abs, miss them.
Yeah, you had a tan. It gets really hot in Chico. Did you ever do like fake, like spray tans, or just like natural? Like spray tans.
I'm pretty pale skinned
for sure,
naturally. Yeah. So I would do the fake tan. Anything I could do to just look my absolute best.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you ever feel like the lifestyle of, what you needed to eat and the level of body fat percentage that you needed to sort of maintain, did you ever feel like too masculine or like manly looking as a female athlete at all, or speak to me about that? No,
I actually really, I'm very fortunate to say this because I know not every woman feels this way about themselves. I loved the way I looked in like an action shot picture of me sprinting, like my muscles bulging out of my legs, my six-pack showing. College age was around the time where I actually like started being a little bit more mindful of nutrition. Always ate very healthy. Fortunately, growing up, we never really ate like too much fast food, like every once in a while, but grew up eating healthy, so I had those great habits already in place. But until the collegiate level where I had a nutrition coach and they would give me a list of things I should like transition in and out of my diet, like maybe switch from this heavy cream for my coffee to just drinking black coffee, those little tiny adjustments to help us perform better for their team really made me more mindful. But I have amazing genetics, to be honest, so I didn't have to do too much to, like, I started weight training and that was like the end all be all for me. I ate good always, but the weight training was really when I started to see my body transform and like seeing my muscles come out, seeing the six-pack, and that's when I really felt the best about myself.
Okay, so it sounds like you personally did not have really any issues with body dysmorphia or body image. It sounds like you really enjoyed how you looked, being very muscular. I mean, call it kind of what it is. I mean, you were sleek as a track athlete, but certainly like you mentioned, like when you're sprinting, like your muscles are like bulging, like your quads, your arms and everything. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you really enjoyed that perspective. Can you speak to like, were other women on the team like concerned about how they looked or not so much?
To be honest, like most of the women on my team we were very encouraging of each other in the weight room and on the track, that I didn't really hear a lot of negative talk. And I think that's why I just loved that team so much. We were just truly a family. There wasn't really a division of anyone. We were all just like one big unit, that there wasn't a lot of negative talk. And I think that's really what helped my whole aspect and like mindset of it. And I'm so fortunate to say that because I know that's not everyone's case. There wasn't a lot of negative talk around me. So that really just transpired into me, and I felt like that radiated off of me because I felt confident to even be on that team first and foremost. And then to be with women that also were, giving me some hype and telling me that I look great and telling me I look strong. And I think that really helped me start a positive path of encouraging myself and now others that muscle's beautiful, athleticism is beautiful. And I think I've always had that mindset because of the people around me. So it all really depends on who you surround yourself with. I'm very lucky to say I did.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had a very supportive network. Teammates, coaches, friends, family, I'm sure.
Yes.
I think my takeaway here is that, because maybe not everybody listening to this is going to feel 100% comfortable in their skin. Like I mentioned, especially with like social media and beauty standards and all this, I know for a fact that not everybody, women specifically, feel good in their own bodies. And there can be this kind of tug and pull of like, do I look a certain way for my social media and for whoever else, just kind of other people, or do I sort of sculpt my physique based on what's going to make me the most athletically successful? So if you happen to be somebody that's listening to this and you find yourself maybe not feeling the best in your own skin, just understand from somebody that experienced this firsthand that strong is beautiful and it is okay to feel good in your own skin, and sort of rippling muscle, like these are things that look good. So take some light from that if you are struggling, like understand that just follow your path to athletic excellence and that you look strong and beautiful, and, find that supportive network.
And I really, thinking back, didn't have much of a social media energy around me. I remember having an Instagram, Facebook, but there was what's on social media now is so different. We would post like silly things on our pages, and it was never to like flaunt ourselves. So I couldn't imagine being an athlete now, or even just starting like a weight training journey or whatever it may be in sports, but I couldn't imagine having that comparison on social media now, because I have zero memory of that. It was just, social media was funky and easygoing and not so serious as it is now. So that's a big difference of something I grew up with versus anyone that might be listening now that has social media presence or following people that with big social media presences.
For sure. I mean, a lot has changed on social media, even just in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a fair point. Okay, let's move forward here. As far as mental performance techniques, is there anything that you sort of know now about mental performance? So I'm going to sort of suggest like breathing techniques, anxiety or stress management techniques, journaling, meditation, mindfulness, any of these sort of things that might have helped your performance as an athlete that was not physical. So we're not talking about like diet or, strength training routines. What do you know now that you wish you would have known earlier in your career as a track athlete that you think would have been helpful for your performance?
Okay, so something I knew actually before that helped me now, I'll just start there first. My coaches were really, really, really big on being mindful. We would actually start most practices, shoes off. We would take a walk by ourselves. We wouldn't be in groups. Everyone get in the zone in your own head. Feet are on the ground. You're feeling the track beneath your feet.
Bare feet.
Bare feet. Even if it was hot, we would just take a lap, which wasn't too hot on our feet, but we would take a big lap around. Everyone would be in the zone, quiet time, just processing what you want to absorb that day in practice. We all knew what we were going to be doing that day. Imagery, picturing what we were doing, how we can translate that into the meet coming up that Saturday. We always started our practices doing that. Also learning about body scans, just another form of imagery. We would then lay on the grass, head to toe imagery. Our coach would actually guide us through it. I'm very fortunate to have started. I loved this team.
Wow.
My coaches would have us.
Sorry to interrupt. Did you have a mental performance coach, or was this just coming from like your head coach?
This is from my head coach. Yep.
Oh, okay. Wow.
He's awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I actually still talk to him to this day. We all chat. He's
care to name drop?
Yes, Oliver Hamp.
Okay.
Shout out.
CSU Chico, Oliver Hamp.
Yep, he's still there. He's amazing. So he would do head to toe scans, start at the top of our head, down to our necks, shoulders, just releasing tension. It just was a good way to start off our practices, even just our meets. From the bus rides, we would all use those techniques our coach would teach us to help our performance. I actually still use it to this day when I'm going to do a big workout, when I'm driving in the car. Sometimes I just shut off full music. I do a little body scan, check in with myself. So that's something I actually use now. So I'll kind of reverse this on you. You said,
Fantastic.
What can I teach myself then? But I really learned all the best stuff when I was in college in my sport.
That's fantastic. I wish that, I hope that there's coaches listening to this, because in my experience, and mental performance coaching and techniques are becoming more prevalent, but they're not super duper prevalent. They are more so at the college level than at lower levels, but it sounds like you had a coach that was very in touch with the mental side, the visualization, the imagery, the grounding techniques, the sort of head to toe body scans. And it sounds like that was super helpful for you. And these are techniques that you still use today.
Yep. And I now share with my clients too.
Your personal training clients. And should you ever be a track and field coach in the future, you'll probably go in with that same sort of mental, to physical performance enhancing regimen. And that's fantastic.
Yep, totally.
So what about, is there anything that you know now that you wish you would have known then?
I've mentioned this a couple times, but I'll carry on with it again. Just the confidence level. I think that's the one thing growing up, even when I was at my peak of performance, that I just always had a little lack of, is just the believing in themselves, feeling good in my own skin. I always, like I said, I never had too big of like body image issues, but there was always something I was nitpicking at, just as we all do, men and women, just really feeling good in my own body. Of course, I wish I had known that then. I feel like I would have been a little bit more relaxed, less tension, less anxiety. But that's something I feel like feel very strongly about now, just because I am helping all of my clients do that every day. It almost helps my own self even more. Talking about it with them, helping them, helps me find a little bit more confidence in myself as well, since they're looking up to me and taking my advice so seriously that I wish I could translate that, be my own personal training client back then.
For sure. So you would say then the one thing that you kind of know now, whether it's something you learned now or just sort of retrospectively looking back, you think that being a little bit more self-confident would have helped you perform better.
Absolutely.
So as far as self-confidence goes, anybody that is participating in a sport at any level right now, just understand that regardless of the level that you are currently participating at, whether it's high school, collegiate, or professional, if your confidence is something that you suffer from, like you're not as confident as you would like to be, understand that it took a certain level of expertise and ability for you to be where you are right now. And so you should have confidence in who you are. That college recruited you because of your ability. And so you might not be as big and as strong potentially as some of the other men or women on your respective athletic team, whatever it is. Like, you are there for a specific reason. So you should be confident in yourself. And the other reason I'm saying this is because as far as sort of following the idea of what I refer to as a self-fulfilling prophecy, we will perform better if we believe that we are the best and we are confident in ourselves. Mentally, as far as like the connection to our physical body and our ultimate performance as an athlete, if you believe that you are the best and that you have confidence in yourself and that you are going to go out there and you are going to run your best race, not necessarily that you're going to win, you can have that belief, but what I recommend to my mental performance coaching clients is have the belief that I am going to run my best race. I am strong. I've done the best that I could possibly do to prepare for this race. I belong here. I am here for a reason.
Yeah, all self-talk.
If you repeat these things, this positive self-talk, these self-affirmations to yourself, have confidence in yourself, you will absolutely, without question, perform better than if you are having negative self-talk and talking down to yourself. So having that confidence, it sounds like maybe that was one of the pieces, and you were probably having some positive self-talk. It sounds like earlier you referenced like your teammates were building you up and stuff. But if there was the one thing that you were saying you wish you would have known sort of younger in your career, it was to be more confident. So for anybody listening that is participating in athletics, have that confidence in yourself. You will absolutely perform better.
When win or lose, you'll still know that you felt good in your body and you gave it all you got.
Absolutely, because those statements are still true. And that's why I said sort of stay away from saying things like, I'm going to win this race. Because if you preface a race, for example, with, I did my best to perform, and I am strong, and I'm going to run my best race, and I am confident, and I belong here. Whether you win or not, those statements that you said to yourself are all still absolutely 100% true. Those statements just make it more likely that you will have the outcome that you want, which is probably to win, depending on the circumstances, but the outcome may not have been to win. It may have been to run a sub 60 400 meter. It may have been get a personal best from my last meet. Those are goals that are within your reach. We call them mastery goals, or sort of growth mindset oriented, where like I'm just competing versus myself and I can control that outcome. I can't necessarily control if I win or not, but I can control the things that I say to myself and my results versus what I did last time.
Yeah, and track and field's so unique on that aspect because I was on a team, contributing to a team, but I also had my own self races and relay races. So I had like that team aspect where I needed to contribute to them, win them points, get the baton, pass safely, all those little things. But then I also had my individual races where it was just me talking to myself, just the things that I wanted to accomplish. So I got like a little taste of both. That's what makes track so interesting and unique, is you're just the team and individual aspect where you can feel those pressures on both sides.
All right, so let's continue our journey about talking about the mental performance of track and field and the ups and downs of, your athletic endeavors. Obviously, any athlete that's played for any prolonged amount of time understands that there's injuries, there's setbacks, there are things that don't go the way that you want to go. Maybe that's getting cut from a team or these sorts of things. So my question for you is, how did you handle setbacks, like any tough losses, for example, a race that you thought you were going to win, you didn't, any injuries that you might have had, periods of plateaus or stagnation where you weren't really making progress? And did you use any mental strategies in sort of helping you recover or overcome those periods?
Yeah, so just on the injury topic first, went through a few, some hamstring tears, shin splints, even like kind of threw out my back, not even actually at practice. I would be at home and I would just do a little tweak, but then that would affect my practice. Just little things here and there. I think shin splints were my biggest devil. That would affected a lot of my track career. Taking the step back and having to sit out, be in the PT room with those coaches, not be with my teammates. Like those were really hard setbacks because I usually had to take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks off, and not do the progressions and seeing all my teammates are doing and talking about. So having to take those steps back, I mean, even now when I have an injury, weightlifting, or any of my clients have little setbacks in their life, it is hard to see them go through it because I know exactly how it feels, especially when you're in a good rhythm, you're feeling good about yourself, and you feel like you're progressing, and then you take those couple steps back. That happens with everything in life. Taking the mental space for myself, I think, was the best thing I could do. So having some alone time. I enjoyed spending time with myself and reflecting, and whether it's positive or negative, I'm very introverted in that way. So not being afraid to letting the setbacks help you in the future. So like really taking the recovery needed. Sometimes I would not want to go to the PT every day and spend time in the ice baths and doing those things because I just wanted to get back out there and didn't want to listen to the professionals, but really trusting those that are trying to help you, and just it is what it is and you will move on. This will pass. So that's something that I actually use till this day, and anyone that is weightlifting or in the gym, they know these little setbacks happen, even just getting the flu for a week or two. Setbacks can suck, but it is what it is, and life happens.
Okay, so it sounds like you have maybe always or certainly currently not really viewed setbacks negatively. You were able to have the cognizance and the mental awareness to view setbacks as almost like a positive thing.
Yeah.
So athletics are very intense, very rigorous, very structured. You're working out 5, 6, 7 times a week probably. Mm-hmm. You're experiencing injuries. So a setback, like an injury, these sorts of things, unfortunately make it so that you can't be making progress on, a new best time, or it's maybe not ideal that you're not out there with your teammates. But for somebody that's a little bit more introverted, such as yourself, and even for somebody that's more extroverted, if you sort of flip the coin and look at a setback as a positive, which can be difficult to do, admittedly, mm-hmm. but if you look at that setback as a time for reflection and for rest and for recovery and for strengthening maybe some stabilizer muscles, you're working with the athletic trainer, maybe a physical therapist, you can actually kind of view, it's kind of what I'm hearing you say, a setback as like a positive, a time for you to focus on yourself.
And don't you, when you like get over an injury or a sickness or anything it is in your life that sets you back, don't you feel almost a little bit more appreciative when, like, once you are feeling healthy and better, like, oh my gosh, like I just miss how that felt. I feel like I took advantage of it. It really just like makes you appreciate your body and your health so much more when you're back to health.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson and a great point that you're trying to make is I think what you're referring to is sort of the practice of gratitude. So for anybody that's ever been injured before or has ever gone through a setback, maybe let's say you injure your hand, for example. We collectively as humans don't recognize how much we use our hands until we can't use it anymore. And so you're absolutely right. Sort of having that practice of gratitude is a good lesson, a good takeaway here, because for a lot of our listeners, they may not have that. It sounds like you personally are very self-aware, which is a great sort of skill in and of itself. But for our listeners, having that sense of self-awareness and that sense of gratitude when you experience an injury, it's an important time to reflect on the abilities of what our body is capable of doing. And when you are healed from that injury, hopefully you're able to return to, 100% your full capability, taking that time during and after to reflect and have that sense of gratitude, like, wow, I'm so grateful for my feet. I'm so grateful for my legs and what they're able to do for me. When you return to your athletic pursuit, having that sense of gratitude, I think, is very helpful in understanding, the limited amount of time and opportunity that you have to participate in your sport. So I think that's a great way of handling setbacks, is with gratitude and self-reflection. Is that right?
Right. A saying I was just thinking of that I think I learned it from some instructor in a class. I remember being like really, really hard in that moment, and I actually started saying this in my classes too, on the microphone, like right in like the heat of it, where you could tell everyone's kind of like tapping out. They're like, don't want to do that last burpee or whatever it is I'm making them do. That I would say, like, you are so lucky you get to be here. You don't have to be here. You get to be here. Especially when I was teaching spin classes, like not everyone can just load up and get on that spin bike. We're so grateful to be able to get to do these things and like get to move our bodies. Some people can't, and getting that into that mindset like really kind of gives you that little like perk of like, wow, like I get to do this. Yeah, this is really hard, but I'm so lucky to do this. Whether it's sports, group fitness, personal training, anything in life, you get to do these things, and we have able moving bodies. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. I talk about that with my personal training clients a lot, and my mental performance coaching clients, but specifically my personal training clients, because exercise, you're right, is something that we get to do. Not everybody can exercise. Not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to exercise. I have, that self-awareness. For example, I see somebody in a wheelchair or one of those sort of motorized scooters, and, I don't necessarily feel bad for that person, but I imagine what it would be like to be in that position. And it makes me feel, again, that sense of gratitude. Like, not everybody can walk, for example. Not everybody can see with their eyes. I had crazy eye surgery a few years ago. Really made me grateful for my vision. I was going to go blind in my right eye. Ended up having to have emergency surgery. So after that, and in that moment, I was like, I could be blind in my right eye. Like, I could be blind. So like having that gratitude for our eyesight, which is something that we take for granted. But exercise, to your point, is something that we get to do. It's not something that we have to do. And simply changing that word in that sentence makes, whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's a sport, whether it's exercise, like more of a privilege. Like, oh, I get to do this, instead of like, I have to do it. It makes it more of a chore. And I talk about that with my personal training clients. Like, you're much more likely to continue doing something that you get to do, because that word alone just makes it sound like more enjoyable as opposed to something I have to do, which is like a chore. So That's a great perspective.
And it makes the setbacks feel a little easier.
Yeah.
They're all tough,
right.
but it does make it a little lighter, a little easier, knowing that good things will come out of it. We have those healthy bodies and all we just talked about.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as, injuries, we've kind of talked about how you handle that as a setback. Were there any other maybe personal setbacks that you had, whether it was like your education, family life, like when you were an athlete that maybe impacted your performance or your mental state or your athletics?
Yeah, so just in the transition year of starting at Chico State, so track season was a year-round sport. The off-season in the fall, winter was a lot of like long-distance runs, and you're in the gym doing weight training, and then once springtime came around after the new year, that's when we would really get to like the nitty-gritty, the details of the sport. But just in that transition of the first year going to Chico State, I did go through a big loss in my family. I lost my dad. That was really hard, especially being new to a team. I was just getting to know everybody. Everything was just starting to blossom and just to happen. And that was like the very, very beginning. So my teachers were not as graceful as my coaches were. My coaches were so supportive and gave me all the time off I needed. And luckily it was just early enough to where I could take a few weeks to a month off. Unfortunately, like teachers were not as graceful about that. They expected me to be back in school the next week, but that's a whole nother topic of teachers versus my amazing coaches. But having that time off at the beginning of the season, I definitely think it did impact me a lot. Not having that time to start with them, that was just like I said, the heat of it, the start of the team, getting to know everybody. So that was like a big loss personally, that I had to take a step back and mentally go through that with my family, and then transition. Okay, now I'm on this brand new track team, which I still was so grateful for. And I'm actually grateful that I had a sport at the time to come back for and something to look forward to versus just going back to school and getting back to normal life. I had something so excited to come back to and still strive for. So I'm very lucky in that sense to have sports to keep my spirits happy and give me a little bit more drive than had I not have.
Well, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear that you had to go through that. Anybody that's ever had to experience a death of a close family member or an animal, a pet, these are very difficult times. So you're a very strong person for making it through that. It sounds like you took a little bit of time away from the athletics. It sounds like, unfortunately, academically, you weren't quite so lucky to be able to have as much leeway. But I'm glad that you were able to take some time and spend some time with your family and collect your thoughts. And it sounds like maybe it wasn't too much of a setback, like we just talked about sort of recently with the injuries and the practice of gratitude. When you came back after the unfortunate passing of your dad, did that impact your athletic performance at all? Do you feel like you had more of a drive afterwards, or were there some setbacks, like mentally, physically?
Yeah, I think I definitely carried. I did have some injuries that year. That was when the shin splints, my knees, back, everything, all the little things that come throughout any sport. But I definitely think at the start of it, carried a lot more stress on my shoulders and in my body, and I think that translated into those injuries. But it did give me a little bit more of a purpose in a sport. Like I was doing it for something bigger. I just felt like I wasn't just, like I said, was talking about earlier, just like a number on a team. I felt such good support from my teammates. After coming back, I just felt so much love and like drive to be better for myself and for my family, and still pick up where I left off. I felt like I would have done myself a disservice and my family a disservice and my dad a disservice had I not come back stronger than ever, and just carrying that confidence, being confident, and striving to still be the best I can be and finish out the collegiate career.
Okay, so it sounds like that was a difficult chapter in your life, but you were able to maintain that positive mindset and that gratitude for your team, for your family, for your coaches, and sort of take that difficult moment and allow it to make you a better person and better athlete.
Yeah. And with track and field, I mentioned how there are the individual events and then there are the more team events. So the relay races, I had to be clocked in. I had 3 other girls with me that were giving it all they got. I have to be contributing just as equally. And there were track meets. There were days that I maybe wasn't fully mentally clocked in, especially that first year coming back after my big loss. And those were the hardest days when I messed up with a baton pass or I misstep. We had proper steps of when we would take off when the next person was coming in from the 100-meter, passing the baton. There was times where I was not as mentally clocked in. I would mess up. We would get DQ'd. We wouldn't win the race, where I would feel so much more pressure and so it was so much more harder on myself versus the individual races where I didn't do as well. But that to me was like, okay, like let's take a step back and reflect. Maybe I didn't do so well today, which I was really good about doing. But it's when I had the pressure of teammates counting on me, those were the hardest days on me, where I would shed some tears. It affected me because I had people counting on me. So the individual, and because everyone experiences different sports, individual or team sports, but yeah, having people rely on you and your mental performance for those days, and maybe you're a little off, maybe they're a little off. You have to come together and be supportive.
So it sounds like, you had the individual events and the relay events, and it was difficult for you to come back from that, no doubt. You did have that renewed sense of purpose, but when you were doing the individual events, it's kind of just on you. Like you're either performing or you're not, and maybe you didn't have the results that you wanted, but at least the results were individual.
Yes.
When you were part of a group, a relay team, those girls were counting on you to perform your best, and you had to show up for them. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like that was both difficult, but also sort of a steadying force, because you knew that you had to perform not just for yourself, but for them as well. So I think that even though you said you weren't necessarily as clocked in as you would like to be, having a relay event probably helped you to focus a little bit more on what you were doing, because you knew that you had to for them. It wasn't just that you could sort of show up and run a race and it wouldn't impact anybody else.
Yeah, it was such a good balance. Like 50% of my races were just me, nothing else to worry about except for me. And then the other 50%, I had to have that contribution and really show up for them. So it was a good pressure balance, I would say, on an average meet day.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it sounds like overall you had a fairly successful and fulfilling athletic career throughout the end of college. Let's talk a little bit more about how your mental skills, maybe that you developed when you were younger as a track and field athlete, maybe even prior to that, carried over into your life now as a personal trainer. So you went through the chapter of your life where you were teaching. Now you're a personal trainer. We as personal trainers, because I'm one as well, deal with clients that are experiencing any number of mental or physical conditions that it's our job to help them overcome. How have the skills that you developed as a track athlete sort of carried over into your work as a personal trainer now? How do you speak to your clients? Do you actively hear yourself and know that you're using mental performance skills with your clients, or sort of walk me through that?
Yeah, like we discussed, the self-talk and the confidence. I wish I could go back in time and give my high school little self a hug, and I'm fortunate to had been as confident as I was, especially in the body image. As girls, that's so hard to overcome, especially at that age. I'm very lucky on that aspect to have that confidence in that spectrum, but something that I carry over into me now is the self-talk. I'm constantly hyping up clients, giving them a little piece of advice. They appreciate that the things and the hardships that I've gone through, because we were all going through something. So giving them my perspective and them giving me their perspective, both ends, it works so good. Like, they're just as important to me as I am important to them. And I think bouncing back off, I work with so many different types of clients. They all have something. I've learned something from every single one of them. So them giving me their pieces of advice is helping me with my self-confidence every day, and then vice versa. And yeah, I wish I can go back in time and do the same thing to my younger self, give her a little hug.
So it sounds like you apply the lessons that you learned as an athlete to your personal training clients, but also that it's a two-way street. So you're teaching them, and you're also learning from them about various things. I'm wondering around the image of body image, around the idea of body image specifically and body dysmorphia, because although you didn't personally experience a lot of that yourself, many of our personal training clients do not come from athletic backgrounds. Many of them are severely underweight, severely overweight. These are people that maybe have difficult relationships with exercise and or diet on either end of the spectrum. Is there any specific way that you handle, because it can be a very delicate subject, is there any specific way that you approach conversations around body image, body dysmorphia, and nutrition with your clients as a personal trainer?
Yeah, I think that the main thing that comes to mind is how comfortable they feel in this new, or maybe it's new to them, weight training and being in a gym atmosphere, or maybe it's something they've done in the past. Maybe they have been on sports teams before and they were confident then and comfortable then, but not as comfortable now. So I usually try and like to feel out how comfy they are in the gym setting. It's very intimidating, especially the gym that you and I both work at. Everyone looks so good. It's clean. Everyone's wearing aesthetic colors. It's just, you walk in and you're like, wow, this is amazing. But it also could have a negative effect on some people. They might walk in and say like, absolutely not, I don't want to be a part of this. So that's usually the first thing I do with my clients. I kind of like to, as I'm getting to know them, like feel out, maybe they don't feel comfortable walking to this area of the room. There's a lot of mirrors over there. Maybe they like to go upstairs. Like, what do they like doing? I like to really dive into that first. And then I like to start teaching them things that maybe they don't love to do, but to give them the comfortability to be able to do that one day on their own and feel good in their body, no matter what gym they walk into, even if they're not a part of the gym that they are now, to carry that on throughout their entire life, is just feeling they're comfortable.
So it sounds like you maybe check in with them. Mm-hmm. Anything up from when they first step into the gym through what's called the jump start session, or an assessment that new gym members go through. You're probably getting to know them and asking them or reading their body language to see if they're looking a little anxious, because it can be very intimidating really joining any gym. We work at one of the best gyms in San Diego. Fortunately, it's a very high-end gym, but to your point that you made earlier, and here in San Diego, there's a lot of good-looking people that are wearing like very tight clothing, or not very much clothing, if we're being quite frank. And it can be very intimidating to somebody that has body image, body dysmorphia issues. They're coming into that gym setting. It sounds like you really lower yourself down to their level, not in a condescending way, but just to be very empathetic, put yourself in their shoes to understand where they're coming from.
Yes.
So you're not bringing them in the middle of a packed weight room. You're not bringing maybe somebody that has body image issues in front of a mirror. So you're being very cognizant of kind of where they are and meeting them at that level.
Yes.
And then building them up, hopefully eventually to the more confident version of themselves. And I think I can speak to this personally. You probably can as well. It's very fulfilling when we've been working with a personal training client for a while, and speaking strictly from a mental perspective, obviously there are hopefully physical changes that are happening in terms of their body fat and their muscle mass, but the mental change when you can see that they're more confident.
To me, that's the best part.
They start dressing a little bit more vivaciously. They're wearing the bright colors now. They're wearing whatever, the sports bra and the leggings, where maybe they were like in sweats and a t-shirt before, and you can just see that they're more confident now. And that's very empowering for you and for them, I'm sure.
It's the best part of this job.
Very fulfilling.
Very fulfilling.
Right? So it sounds like mental performance does play a role in how you coach and mentor your clients now. Are you thinking about it that way, or is it just kind of ingrained in the way that you interact and speak to people?
Yeah, I would say I don't necessarily think the way I coach and how mindful I am now is from track, but it's so cool in a moment like this to be able to reflect back on what did shape me, because now I'm thinking, wow, all these things actually did translate to how I am today. But I definitely know that I have a large advantage over others going through all the hardships and the good ships, being on such a amazing supportive team. Having those people really shaped me, and had I not been on that team, I don't know if I would have the same confidence and personality and coaching skills as I do now. That did really shape me, and I'm so lucky to say that. So I definitely feel the confidence, and I feel the support, and I feel like I've gone through so much to be able to perform and coach at the level that I am now. But it's awesome to be able to see where that all came from. So it starts back early on, adolescence.
It's nice to be able to take a moment to reflect, which is a skill that we talked about earlier when you're injured, and having that gratitude and self-reflection when we're younger, and maybe when we're in the middle of things like our athletic journey. I know I don't, and I know from working with clients and just speaking to people generally in a general sense, that when we're in the middle of things, we often don't take the time to slow down and reflect on or realize what we're going through, which is essentially sort of a practice called mindfulness, which is being aware in the present moment, non-judgmentally specifically, which is just sort of being aware of our thoughts, being aware of our surroundings as a general concept. When we're in the middle of things, we oftentimes we don't take a moment to have that appreciation and step back and think about it. So it's interesting. I'm glad that you took the time to come onto the podcast today, because you were saying, you hadn't really thought about these things. And it's kind of interesting to reflect back and think about our journey and our experiences and who and what shaped us into who we are today. And thinking about the skills and techniques that we used previously and what we're using now, just sort of putting it into a general context. So I think it's a very great opportunity that we're able to talk about this today, and I really thank you for sharing your experiences as such.
Well, thank you for letting me reflect and experiencing all these emotions again.
As we sort of kind of wrap up the episode here, I want to talk about some key lessons that you learned and, advice for sort of the next generation, right? Because you and I did some athletics in myself. I never played at the college level, but here we are, right, talking about our experiences with athletics and mental performance coaching and personal training. We're on the other side of that athletic career. So I want to talk about some advice for the younger generation, people that might be in middle school, high school, eventually even actively in college, sort of. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what's the one piece of mental performance or sort of body image advice that you would give to your younger self? I know we talked about this a little bit already, but just to kind of refine that point.
Yeah, just feel good in your own skin. Pursue that path that you envisioned for yourself. Just go for it. Start lifting weights as early as possible.
Absolutely.
That's a big one. I know that's a little bit not off topic, but that's huge to me. As soon as I started lifting weights, my confidence immensely grew.
It's not off topic at all.
Yeah.
I mean, if the takeaways from today's episode being what we talked about earlier are confidence, organization, and preparation for that next level of athletics, weight training is obviously a physical pursuit, but if the net result of weightlifting is that you are more confident in yourself, then it really the physical and the mental are indelibly tied together. You can't really have one without the other. So engaging in weight training, particularly as a woman from a younger age, is going to make you more confident. That is, if that's the number one piece of advice that you have for, say, younger women, particularly those in athletics, that's huge. Like that will absolutely impact mental performance and confidence and body image and feeling good in your own skin and performing your best.
All ties in together. I wish I could tell high school Hailey, go lift some weights. You will feel so good, so strong, and it's just such a good setup if you go into a collegiate sport. It's such a good setup for that sport because that's when you really start to get down to business. So having that preparation for your body is huge.
It's super empowering too. To be able to be in the weight room. I know we're tying a lot of these ideas into personal training, but from the confidence perspective, like I have a lot of clients who are women, and there's anxiety, feeling stressed, body image, right? So many of these things that can tie into like depression, all mental, which can be very heavily tackled or enhanced by weight training. And obviously we're both personal trainers, so that's something that we sort of prescribe or recommend to people generally speaking. But for younger athletes, particularly women, whether it's track and field or any other sport, oftentimes at the junior age, you're not really in the weight room. It's like you're on a soccer team, you go to soccer practice, you go home.
Yep.
Like there's no weights. But it's like at some point in high school or college, and I think the average age of people engaging in weightlifting is becoming younger and younger, and I fully support that trend. What we're talking about right now is feeding into that. So engage in weightlifting at a younger age, obviously safely, with a coach or a trainer, things of that nature, or a good friend that knows about what they're doing.
Yeah.
But go pick up some dumbbells, get in the gym. You're going to be more confident, less anxious, less depressed, more fulfilled with your body image. And not to mention, your athletic performance is going to be significantly enhanced.
You're going to sleep good. You're going to feel good. Anxiety, all of those things.
Absolutely. So as far as, key takeaways from today's podcast, I think the top 3 that we have that we talked about are confidence, which is ultimately most of what we just discussed, organization, and preparation. We didn't spend as much time talking about those 2 things, but organizing your daily routine, for example, organizing, by week, by month, setting to-do lists, setting goals for yourself. These are not things that we tackled specifically in the context of this podcast, but short and long-term goals, daily, weekly, sort of checklists of things that you want to accomplish. These are things that will keep you more organized. Preparing ahead of time, your nutrition, your equipment for the game the next day. These sorts of things are really tied into performing your best. You're not going to be as stressed. You're not going to be as anxious. You're going to be just more well suited to, overall athletic success.
Correct. Yeah.
So real quick before we wrap up, I know you mentioned this earlier, but once again, where can people follow your journey? I believe you said you had an Instagram. Yes,
Instagram is Hailey Jackson Fit, and I'm a trainer in San Diego at Fit in Little Italy.
Perfect. So again, I'll leave that information in the captions below. I encourage anybody listening to reach out to Hailey about her athletic career, anything that we discussed today, or about personal training or any of the above. I highly encourage you to reach out to her. We're looking forward to many great things from Hailey in the future, including potentially coaching. I think you would be a fantastic coach.
Thanks, Justin.
So I encourage you to pursue anything and everything that you would like to do.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you once again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here today for this episode. And it's truly been a pleasure getting to hear your story. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
We'll talk again soon in the
Thank
future.
you.
Okay?
So fun.
All right, Hailey. Bye-bye.
Bye.